we make an a by a square, and then we adjacent to that we make an a by b rectangle, where b is just the right length so that these two rectangles, the big one, which I've shown here, and this smaller one, which I've shown here, are proportional to each other. One is a blown up copy of the other, and when they're proportional to each other, the long side divided by the short side equals the long side divided by the short side. And so here's our proportion. The V5 problem is to start with this setting and this equation and solve this equation for a over b. So we need to find a over b. That a over b is called the golden ratio. So we can cross multiply. A times a is a squared. And we can cross multiply here and we'll get equals ab plus b squared. We're trying to solve for a over b. There's many ways to do that, but one kind of clever way is to divide both sides of the equation by b squared. Since b is not going to be 0, we can do that. Note that a squared over b squared is the same thing as a over b quantity squared. Here the b on top cancels one of the b's on the bottom, and here we have 1. Now we're going to let x equal a over b. So we have x squared, because a over b squared equals x plus 1. Subtracting x from both sides and subtracting 1 from both sides and scrolling up, we have this equation which we can solve with the quadratic formula. So we have x equals the opposite of whatever b is. That's the opposite of -1, that's positive 1. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. -1 times -1 is 1. Minus 4 times a times c. A times c is -1, all over 2 times a. But a is going to be 1, so 2 times a is just 2. So we have x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of, this is 4, so 1 plus 4 is 5. And since these lengths of a and b are parts of a rectangle, they can never be negative. And so these are the two solutions that we supposedly have. But this number is a little bit more than 2, so this is negative, and a negative divided by a positive is a negative, and we can't have a negative ratio here. We can't. And so x, we're going to replace x with what it equals, a over b, is 1 plus the square root of 5 over 2. So on my calculator, I did this quantity divided by 2 and got approximately this number. That is called the golden ratio. Your V5 problem is to do exactly this and turn it in as a homework assignment, and then be ready to do this exact work on our second exam. Not the exam coming in a week or so, but the one after that, our last exam before the final.